What's up, guys? It's Casey Zuckelman, aka the Fourth Sanderson Sister, coming at you with another Hocus Pocus theory video slash fandom mashup slash what if. I don't know what to call it, really, but let's go with Fourth Sister Brand Insanity. I think that's a good name for it, because no matter what I call it, I'm gonna have you all questioning whether or not I've lost my mind completely. Today, I'm going to answer the question that was on absolutely no one's mind but my own. Are Hocus Pocus and Dark Shadows connected? I'm guessing the first question you guys have is, Casey, what the heck is Dark Shadows? I've mentioned it before on this channel when alluding to other witch characters I love or slightly toxic fan bases. I even did a couple of videos on the subject back when I was first starting out as a YouTuber, and most of them are still up, I think. I'll plug one right here. A little history lesson will probably help before we get started to bring you guys up to speed completely, as it will go a long way today.
Okay, Smokey, roll 'em.
On June 27th, 1966, ABC rolled out a new daytime soap opera created and helmed by Dan Curtis. This soap opera was based on a dream Curtis had about a mysterious young woman on a train. He told his wife about the dream, then pitched the idea to TV execs, and the project was greenlit. Art Wallace was hired by Curtis to create a story around the dream, and he came up with the story Bible for Shadows on the Wall, which would later be changed to Dark Shadows. A story about the trials, tribulations, and tragedies of the wealthy Collins family, around whom supernatural occurrences tended to gravitate. At first, the show did alright, but 1966 saw a lot of soaps being cancelled that year, and by December, Dark Shadows hadn't caught enough of an engaged audience. So, facing cancellation, since Curtis always wanted to do a vampire, they brought in, now iconic, Barnabas Collins, played by Jonathan Frid. Frid's character saved the show from cancellation and went on to become the show's most iconic character. Fans were enamored by him, but eventually the show started losing steam again until the story arc of 1795, when Angelique Bouchard was introduced. She was the witch who cursed Barnabas to be a vampire out of revenge for a broken heart. I have very strong feelings on this anti-hero, but we're not going to get into that right now. The show would go through a few more dips and climbs before finally ending in 1971. There was a short-lived revival of the series in the 90s, 4 novels written by Angelique's original actress, the late Laura Parker, and in 2012, Tim Burton produced and directed a movie version that was really beloved by people who hadn't seen this property before and despised by those who had. I still have a soft spot for it, as it does have a lot of my favorite actors in it, like Johnny Depp, Ava Green, and Helena Bonham Carter. It was my introduction to the property, and while it had some major missteps, it has its merits. Now you're wondering what all this has to do with Hocus Pocus, I'm sure. Well, that's where today's video comes in. When Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel came out in 2018, it included a map in the beginning of the book, and one of the locations was called Collins Cove. I immediately made the connection to the Collins family from Dark Shadows, as explained in the 1840 storyline. Flashback to 1692, there were Collins family members living in Salem, Massachusetts, so they did have a family settled in that town. However, since this book became non-canon with the addition of Hocus Pocus 2, I kinda had to drop that theory until one day.
A date which will live in infamy.
I'm sure you guys have not forgotten my ravings back before Hocus Pocus 2 came out about a particular character who, once introduced, didn't really have a lot to do with the plot in the present day, but had a major impact on the Sanderson sisters as children. I'm talking about Reverend Trask, of course. You all saw my reaction to that name, and I made several references to Dark Shadows when talking about this character. There's a reason for that. In the Dark Shadows storyline of 1795, where Angelique Bouchard, the witch, was introduced, another character came calling at the gates of Collinwood when suspicions of witchcraft arose. He came to the door in a black overcoat and wide-brimmed hat, like frickin' Cad Bane from Star Wars: The Clone Wars. He carried a Bible and introduced himself as Reverend Trask. Minus the E. He quickly became one of the most vile, volatile, evil villains of the entire series. 1,225 episodes of a series. He came in or somewhere around the 400s. He tormented Victoria Winters, the girl Angelique was framing for her own magic. He tormented Angelique later on. And his descendants showed up in, I kid you not, every single story arc from that point forward. Reverend Trask hailed from...
Pause for effect.
Salem, Massachusetts. He was born out of wedlock, put into an orphanage by his father, then readopted. I don't know why, but apparently, according to the wiki, that was a thing for this family. Maybe it was so the reverends could appear more pious and kind-hearted, like they were really godly men helping out these poor orphans. You know what? Sounds kind of like how Reverend Trask with an E took in the Sanderson sisters when their father passed away, don't it? So he could appear more pious and holy by correcting the behavior of misbehaving orphan girls. And you know what else sounds a lot like Reverend Trask with an A? Reverend Trask the Eeless was also a witch hunter. The farthest back we know of the Dark Shadows Trask family tree is 1760, which obviously takes place after the initial Hocus Pocus timeline. But clearly there were more people in his family tree, otherwise he wouldn't have been born. Here's where the crossover comes in. What if Dark Shadows' Trask is the descendant of the one in Hocus Pocus? It's not unusual for names to drop certain letters through the years while still being in the same family, like losing an E, per se, here or there, in the surname. So, while one has an E and the other does not, they could have easily dropped the E from their name for a number of years before, with Mayor Trask going back to the original spelling to appear more dignified for political reasons. The Trasks have always been in some sort of power position, whether that be in Salem or in Collinsport. Winifred was even shocked that the influence of his family is still strong after 3 centuries.
Uh-oh, Winnie. 'Tis the Reverend. He's alive?
Must be a descendant. Who is this man?
That's the mayor.
Incomprehensible. 300 years later, and the dark cloud of Trask still looms over Salem.
And like I said earlier, Trask's descendants popped up in every single story arc in every era of time they visited from his introduction forward. Dark Shadows Trask is clearly the descendant of Tony Hale's Reverend Trask. It's impossible to say they're from different families when the cards line up as well as they do for the family tree. Dark Shadows Trask also talks about coming from a long line of witch hunters dating back to Salem. Well, who were the notorious witches that Tony Hale's Trask was hunting? The Sanderson sisters. He was obsessed with them, keeping journals on their every action and every movement. Trask in Dark Shadows did the same thing with the witches he was hunting. He obsessed over Victoria, then Angelique not long after. He didn't think he was wrong no matter what he did, even though he did condemn an innocent girl to death, and then he got the right one later. But the point is, the two Reverend Trasks are absolutely related, and that makes it possible that these two stories take place in the same universe. At least to me. This makes total sense, both in-universe and actually out-of-universe, because this name does not belong to someone actually involved with the Salem witch trials. I looked. I checked. There is a historian with the last name of Trask who knows a lot about the Salem witch trials. The Sanderson sisters name-dropped the Paris coven, obviously alluding to the Paris family, but Trask was a made-up character in both Hocus Pocus 2 and in Dark Shadows. I really, really think this was a hidden Easter egg for people who might have at one point watched both of these properties. Jen D'Angelo could not have just pulled that name out of thin air when she was writing this story. She has to be a Dark Shadows fan. You don't just say, oh yeah, Trask is a good name for this witch hunting reverend. No. Not after this soap opera's existence and impact on supernatural serial series. Now, I also want to give a quick nod to something else that I think really kind of works these two universes together, and that is the prior mentioned 1692 Salem, Massachusetts flashback in the 1840 story arc of Dark Shadows with a witch trial of warlock Judah Zachary. He was born from Diabolos, that timeline, or that era's the devil, to become the leader of the witches, killed a lot of people, and he fell in love with a girl named Miranda Duval. And you know what? It wasn't until she testified against him that he was stopped. Now, why would all the attention be put on him during this time? Salem witch trials were in full swing, and clearly there were quite a few other witches to deal with, right? Well, obviously not, otherwise the Sanderson sisters would have been caught, which is why Judah is the perfect scapegoat for him. You all know that Winifred does not like being told what to do, and she was around quite a bit longer before Judah. Winnie would be looking for any opportunity, and every opportunity, to get rid of him, because you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm not going to bow to some little brat. Why would I do that? And keep her family safe. I did a video on how I think they escaped the hysteria, which was more based in history, and you can watch that by clicking on this thing right here. But consider this, since we're talking about these stories in the same universe. Here's our fictionalized answer. He's been great coverage for them up to this point. They've been able to get away with literal murder because he's over here just flaunting his powers and making a big spectacle of himself. They're flying under the radar because they're like, well, this dude's doing all this. We got this. Keep doing that. Keep doing that. We're doing good over here. So he's making a spectacle out of himself, so they can just skirt on through. But they're in no way loyal to this supposed Dark Prince. Because again, screw authority. Witch trials are happening. He's in love with Miranda, who's a bit of a coward when it comes to the whole death thing. And they want to skirt on through this witch hunt. Like, hey, he's over there showing off. Let's just use this guy. Miranda is convinced by Amadeus Collins to testify against Judah. But how does Amadeus learn she's a witch? Dark Shadows fans, please forgive me if you're watching this and I don't remember everything completely. It's been a while since I watched the show, but I did try to do my research, and they were very vague on this point. Winnie sends Sarah to plant the bug in Amadeus's ear, like, hey, she's a witch, and so is Judah. You might be able to convince her to testify against him. This is everything that's been happening, so, you know, Sarah would be the perfect one to be like, here's the idea. I'm going to put it in your head, and then I'm going to leave. And the rest is solved in the Dark Shadows story, where he got beheaded. Of course, he still causes trouble later on, but hey, watch the show. It's on Tubi. If it's not on Tubi, I think it's on Prime. Anyway, between that flashback and the major connection with the Trask bloodline, Hocus Pocus and Dark Shadows have to take place in the same universe. Plus that coincidence with the whole Collins Cove thing. I'm sorry. They just have to. The Trask thing is just irrefutable proof. I see you, Jen. I see you. I know what your game is. That was very good, ma'am. That was very good. Is this also my way of making myself feel better 2 years later for the whole Trask is the villain and then he actually wasn't thing? Maybe. It might be. Kinda. But let me have this. It was therapeutic. I had to come to terms with it. I feel better now that I did this. At least I can think that his descendants got dumber over time and we ended up with our candy apple idiot. So, there you go. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't. It's free. It helps me. What helps me helps you guys get more great content like this. Thursday night, we're back on Twitch with more 4th Plays Hogwarts Legacy. Thanks for letting me skip last week due to the heat sickness I was experiencing. I haven't felt that ill in a very long time, and I really don't want to again, so I'm gonna make it up to you guys this week, and hopefully all the technology will work well enough that we can have some fun and not have too many glitches like the week before last. So I think I figured it out. We may have to play through a couple little glitches, but it may not be too bad. Then Saturday night, we're back here for more Black Flame Gaming, where we'll continue Winifred Sanderson Plays Pokemon Heart Gold and Nuzlocke Edition. It's going alright. We're 3 badges in. 3 badges in. That's not too bad. We have some more encounters coming up. I'm excited about that. And we got our 4th gym next week. I mean, Winnie's doing alright right now. If you're a regular on this channel, please remember to drop a like and share your thoughts on this fourth brand insanity down below. It's been a while since I went off the rails with something like this. I just thought, hey, why not? I just kind of wanted to make the connection between the two universes. I've been meaning to do it for a while. I've been meaning to do it for the last 2 years, and I haven't done it. Because, you know, things have been happening, but I thought, why not? So, bear with me. You'll get something more serious next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Casey Zelgelman, aka the Fourth Sanderson Sister. I'll see you, witches and wizards, later.
I put a spell on you.